My name is Luke. Growing up in a single-parent household, I landed a job at a small construction firm once I graduated high school. This company dealt with building renovations, interiors, and exteriors. I was fortunate to be hired as a sales representative there. I had my fair share of challenges dealing with some tough craftsmen and surrounded by older colleagues. I was able to push through as they trained me well and treated me kindly. After working there for 7 years, when I turned 25, the owner of the construction firm suggested that I should try out for a mid-career recruitment exam at a national home building company. He appreciated the work I did and felt I should explore a bigger world. Initially, I declined. I felt I hadn't yet repaid the kindness of the owners who hired me straight out of high school and taught me everything from scratch. But when I expressed this, the owner and my colleagues laughed. "The best way you could repay us is if we can see you working your tail off at a big company." I was motivated with those words. I wanted to experience a broader world and let everyone see my hard work. Encouraged by everyone, I took that recruitment exam and passed with flying colors. And that's how I began working at a major home building company's branch as a sales representative. Starting out at the home building company, I struggled to keep up with the older colleagues. But I utilized everything I had learned and experienced, and I gave it my all to keep up. Finally, when I turned 30, I was transferred to work at the company's main office in sales. When I went to share the good news with the folks from my previous job, they were genuinely happy for me. It's rare to find a workplace that's so supportive even of those who've left. I was blessed to have such a wonderful workplace. Seeing their joy, I felt even more motivated to give my best at the main office. And that's when I met Catherine, who worked as the CEO's secretary. Our first encounter was quite the surprise. "Hey, Luke, isn't it? Remember me?" she exclaimed, looking as excited as a young girl, and I couldn't help but smile. Her vibrant and cheerful personality hadn't changed a bit. Catherine and I were high school classmates. "Of course I remember you. It's been a while. I had no idea we worked for the same company. You never attend any high school reunions. I've been wanting to catch up." Catherine was as chatty as she was in high school, but she had changed in appearance. Back in school, she was this popular, friendly girl, and now, over a decade later, she's become a mature and stunning woman. The tan look she had from her tennis days in high school was replaced by a fair-skinned beauty. And her mature makeup look was impeccable. I used to have a soft spot for Catherine in high school but never had the courage to confess since she was so popular. Seeing her again after all these years got my heart racing like old times. Yet, she was oblivious to my feelings and even reached out for a handshake. Of course, I reciprocated, and she said with a smile, "I'm glad. Let's catch up more from now on." Unknowingly casting her charm, I realized I was falling for Catherine all over again. Later on, I casually asked if she had a boyfriend, and the sheer relief I felt upon learning she was single was overwhelming. Meeting Catherine gave me more energy for my work. The director of sales at the headquarters was an older kind gentleman who patiently taught me, a guy who only graduated from high school, how to do the job. However, that all changed one day. It was about a year after I joined the sales department at the headquarters, around the time I was thinking of confessing my feelings to Catherine. Over that year, Catherine and I have grown close enough to go out for dinner together. So, I mustered the courage, hoping we could become a couple, but then, shockingly, the director of sales fell and had to abruptly resign. This sudden news rocked all the employees. And then, a guy named John, who had previously been a manager and graduated from Harvard, took over the department. This turn of events wasn't good for me at all. In the headquarters sales department, most of the folks around me were college graduates and competent. Among them, I was just a high school graduate who used to work at a small local construction firm. John had this elitist view, putting too much value on higher education. He had often thrown unkind words at me. "You sure you're in the right place? We don't need high school grads here." And don't get too comfortable just because the director was nice. I won't acknowledge you, were the sorts of things he'd whisper about me. But the fact was, being just a high school grad, I couldn't keep up with my colleagues. Still, I gritted my teeth and persevered. John wouldn't say these things in front of the former director, and on the surface, he didn't assign unreasonable tasks to me. That's how I managed to endure it. But with the director gone and John at the helm, his attitude towards me might become more overt, and I was really worried about that. Sadly, my worries came true. Ever since he became the director, John's bad attitude towards me intensified. He's too slow, dead weight of the sales team. This is why we shouldn't hire high school grads. He'd say these things even in front of others. He'd clearly pile on more work than I could handle, resulting in endless overtime. Many times, he'd give me urgent tasks right before lunch, leaving me with no time to eat. Work used to be fun, but since John took over, my stress levels skyrocketed. During these tough times, Catherine was my pillar of strength. I felt pathetic about my situation and hadn't told Catherine about the issues with Director John. But maybe she sensed something from the way I appeared at work. Always cheerful, she'd invite me out on weekends to take a break, gift me energy drinks, and sometimes even bring me lunch, saying I made too much. She tried to cheer me up without asking me anything, and I was deeply grateful. I honestly think that I might not have continued working there if it wasn't for her. For me, the only time off I had at work, other than seeing Catherine, was taking breaks. It was about heading to the smoking area. I don't smoke, and neither does John. So, he would never come to this area. There weren't many smokers at the company, so it was mostly empty. For me, it was a haven. "Hey, you are here again today." The one who greeted me was an older gentleman I'd met at the smoking area. A dapper man in a sharp suit. Despite being much older, he was very respectful and gentle towards a younger guy like me. He told me his name was Robert, but he never revealed his last name or department. I was curious, but on the flip side, perhaps because I didn't know his department or position, I realized it might be better not having to tiptoe around him. I stopped prying. "How have you been lately? Are you getting along with the new director?" Robert asked me, as I shared with him how I was once again loaded with a ton of work for the day. Robert would always lend a listening ear. I shared about my challenges with John's actions, but when Robert asked, "That director is awful to you today too, ever think about quitting?" I shook my head. I'm grateful to my current workplace for taking a chance on a high school graduate like me, who had little experience in sales. Folks at the construction company I used to work for said they wanted to see me out in the big world, hustling. It would be disrespectful to those who supported me if I showed any weakness now. Hearing this, Robert smiled warmly. "You're a good kid." Being called a kid at 30 was a bit embarrassing, but from Robert's perspective, I might seem like a young child or even a grandchild. I went on to share about my dreams. "I want to work even harder, let more people know and love our company. I want our clients to think they made the right choice, having me as their salesperson." After my enthusiastic declaration, Robert remarked, "I was once filled with such passion when I was young too. It's probably young folks like you who are holding up the company." Though his words felt a bit overly flattering, they were still comforting. It felt like I had gained another supporter in Robert. But a few days later, a crisis struck. John dumped a monumental error on me. But it was a mistake from a task that John had done himself. I didn't even know the details of the task until John pinned the mistake on me. Considering the error involved a major client, it could potentially tarnish our company's reputation. John's directorial position might be in jeopardy, I thought, but to my surprise, he shifted all the blame onto me and pressured me to resign. "If I say it's your fault, then it is. You don't have to come in from tomorrow. For the sake of appearances, you'll need to take responsibility. A week of suspension and then you're out. Lucky you, you get to rest tomorrow. Take your time writing your resignation." Of course, I fought back, but to no avail. The rest of the sales team tried to gently tell John it wasn't my fault, but he was unyielding. It seemed my resignation was set in stone. When I saw Robert, I told him about it. To my shame, I think I was on the verge of tears. It's frustrating, losing my job over a mistake I didn't make. I still wanted to give it my all here. Robert listened patiently, then patted me on the shoulder. It's all right. Everything is already in place. Just leave it to me. I wasn't sure what he meant, but I was too stunned by the recent events to ponder over his words. That day, I went home devastated. I couldn't eat or sleep during my week of suspension. Catherine called me numerous times and even came over, but I couldn't face her. I felt ashamed in front of her, even though she had always cheered me on. Understanding my feelings, she texted, "Remember, I'm on your side." Moved by her kindness, I couldn't help but shed tears. When my suspension ended, though I was told to bring a resignation letter, I didn't. I was determined to voice my grievances, even if it meant being fired. Wanting to talk to Robert, I headed to the smoking area. And there he stood, greeting me with his usual warm smile. As I was about to speak, Robert beat me to it and dropped a bombshell. "I have a favor to ask of you." Huh. I couldn't believe it at first, but when I looked into Robert's eyes, it didn't seem like he was lying. So, I decided to trust him and headed to see John. When John saw me, he had a smug grin on his face. "Lucky you, getting a whole week off. Took your sweet time with that resignation letter. Never had an undereducated subordinate like you before, but today's goodbye. Gonna miss ya." Looking down on me, I coldly replied to John, "I'm not quitting. I've been offered a position, so I'll work my hardest." "What? You talking nonsense? Got too much rest and went cuckoo." Faced with John's disbelief, I relayed Robert's message. He asked if I could be the department manager. "What? That's not possible." John's shock scream echoed throughout the office. Then, Robert and Catherine appeared. "What's up with you two?" Annoyed, John glared at both Robert and Catherine. To that, Catherine made a shocking statement. "He is the current chairman of the board." Not only was John stunned, but I was too. As the story went, Robert had retired from the position of CEO over 10 years ago. He held the title of chairman, but he left the management to his son, the current CEO. Chairman, John was frozen in shock. I remembered hearing that John joined the company midway. He had come about 5 years ago, so he probably didn't know what the chairman looked like. The chairman had avoided the limelight, declining all photo opportunities. So many, like us, didn't recognize him. The chairman, looking at me, spoke kindly. "Catherine, my executive assistant, mentioned that there might be someone judging others based on education. There were also rumors of employees being treated unfairly by seniors, thinking that if the CEO got involved, evidence might be covered up or tampered with. I disguised as an elderly employee to gather stories from various departments. Being retired for so long, the younger folks wouldn't recognize me. Some veteran employees did, but when I told them the reason, they all kept quiet." All this time, I had been complaining about John's treatment of me to Robert, unaware he was the chairman. "I truly meant it when I said I wanted you to be the department manager. The CEO is on board with this. We can't lose a talent like you." Hearing this, John turned pale. "What are you talking about? Manager, this is some joke. I can't handle that." "Well, you can always go back to being a regular employee. Your behavior has been quite inappropriate. We're considering demoting you. The execs are on the same page, so brace yourself." John was panicking. "I haven't done anything wrong. Everything was training." Stepping forward, Catherine said, "That won't work here. We've been interviewing other sales department staff. Some even kept notes of your remarks. You can't escape this." Realizing his mistakes, John looked defeated. "Don't you have something to say to Luke?" Urged by the chairman, John meekly said, "I'm sorry," and bowed his head to me. But then, in a quiet voice, He muttered, "Just a subordinate." I confidently retorted, "When did I ever say I was your subordinate? Our roles might reverse soon, you know. If John gets accepted as a regular employee, I'll be his boss. So, I think I'm allowed a little pushback." John bit his lip and glared at me, but I ignored him. Later on, the chairman formally asked me to become the sales department manager. I honestly wasn't sure about it, but when he said, "I want someone who is as dedicated to their job as you to be the manager," I couldn't refuse such a generous compliment. I bowed deeply. "I will give it my all. Thank you very much." When I looked up, Catherine was mouthing "Go for it." Having her support made me feel like I could achieve anything. Later on, my promotion to manager was officially announced, and John was demoted to a regular employee. The previous manager transferred to another department, and a new director came in, so things were hectic with all the handovers, but recently, things have finally settled down. Around that time, Catherine made a feast for me at her home to celebrate my promotion. I took that opportunity to confess my feelings for her. Originally, I planned to do it a year ago, but with all that happened with John, it just wasn't the right time. Thankfully, my confession went well. That night marked the beginning of our relationship, a moment I had been waiting for over a year. I was already over the moon, but Catherine had even prepared a gift for me. It was a new pair of leather shoes. The ones I had been wearing were old and worn out. Despite everything that had happened, she wanted to celebrate a fresh start for me. Actually, I've always been self-conscious about my large shoe size. But she took a mold from my current shoes and got the perfect pair for me. There was also a shiny shoehorn. I was amazed at how well the shoes fit when I slipped them on with the shoehorn. Well, they fit perfectly. Thank you so much. I feel even more motivated to do well at work now. Yes, go for it. I love seeing you enjoy your work. I'm rooting for you. Her smile and those shiny shoes filled me with even more enthusiasm for my job. 2 years have passed since then. Now, in the sales department, no one judges people based on their educational background. Things are going smoothly in my new department, and it seems like it's a good fit for me. John works under me. At first, things were awkward, but after many heart-to-heart talks and a few arguments, he has become a valuable colleague. He has genuinely reflected on his actions. There have been changes in my personal life as well. Catherine and I got married, and she is now on maternity leave. I can't wait to start living with our upcoming baby and Catherine. I owe my current happiness to the chairman and Catherine, and also to the construction company that took a chance on me, even though I only had a high school diploma. Being surrounded by such wonderful people is my greatest pride. So, how was that? Subscribing to the channel would greatly motivate us. See you in the next video.